Amber had mentioned the corporate dinner 3 weeks in advance, almost like she wanted it planted in my head long before the date came around. She said it so casually, leaning over the counter while stirring her tea. It's just a work thing at the club. Super boring, all suits and small talk. You'd hate it. I didn't think twice at the time. She worked in marketing and events like that were common enough. But then she brought it up again a few days later, unprompted. You should go visit your brother that weekend, she said. Seriously, Nick's been wanting to hang out with you for months. It'll do you good. That's when I felt it. That little shift in her tone. Too enthusiastic, too eager to get me out of town. I smiled and nodded, but a voice in my head immediately whispered, "Why is she so excited for you to be gone?" I tried brushing it off. Everyone deserves a little space now and then, right? But after that conversation, her whole demeanor felt different. Lighter in a way that wasn't relaxed, it was calculated. Like someone who knew they'd just pulled off the first stage of a heist. She started texting more, smiling down at her phone when she thought I wasn't watching. One night I asked who she was talking to, and she said, "It's just the group chat from work." But when I reached out to grab the remote on the couch next to her, she quickly turned the screen face down. I noticed her hand was trembling slightly. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and leaned back, but my gut was beginning to knot up into something I couldn't untangle. When the weekend finally came, I played along, packed a bag, told her I'd head out Friday morning. She kissed me goodbye at the door, said, "Have fun," and that fake smile crept onto her face again. I got in my car, pulled away, and drove 15 minutes to a gas station on the edge of town. I parked behind the building and just sat there for a while, staring at the dashboard. I didn't have a real plan. I just knew I wasn't leaving. Something deep inside told me I needed to stay. And sure enough, that night proved I wasn't crazy. At 6:30 p.m., I drove out to the country club she'd mentioned. An upscale place nestled behind wrought iron gates and a manicured lawn. It was the kind of place where the valets wore suits and everyone pretended to be someone more important than they really were. I pulled into a side lot, far enough away to avoid being noticed, and waited. I watched groups of people arrive. Men in tailored blazers, women in sleek dresses, laughter echoing across the courtyard. Amber told me the event started at 7. At 7:15, I got out of the car and walked up to the building. My palms were sweating. My heart was pounding, even though I didn't know what I was walking into. I told myself maybe it really was just a boring work dinner. Maybe she had dressed up more than usual because it was formal. Maybe I'd walk in, see her laughing with coworkers, and feel like an idiot for being so suspicious. But I didn't even have to walk all the way in. As soon as I stepped through the entryway, I was hit with the sound of music. Live jazz, upbeat and wild. Nothing like the stiff corporate events I'd been imagining. Laughter and clinking glasses echoed through the grand room. Waiters were weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne, and people were dancing like it was some private wedding reception. It wasn't just a dinner. It was a celebration. And there she was, Amber, right in the center of it all, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, one that clung to her in a way I hadn't seen her dress in months. Her hair was pinned up, and her makeup was done like she was out to impress someone. She looked beautiful, and I hated that my first instinct was still to admire her. She wasn't sitting with a group of coworkers. She wasn't chatting politely over wine. She was sitting on someone's lap. A man I didn't recognize, mid-30s, good-looking, arrogant smile. His hand was wrapped around her waist like he owned her, and she was whispering something into his ear, giggling like a schoolgirl. Felt like the ground fell out from under me. I stepped back, instinctively flattening myself against the wall just outside the main dining area, trying to process what I was seeing. I wasn't sure if I wanted to barge in and confront her, or just disappear. My stomach turned in on itself. My hands started to shake, and she still hadn't seen me. For a minute, maybe longer, I just stood there watching them. The man said something that made her laugh, and she leaned in even closer. He kissed her on the cheek. She didn't flinch. She smiled. She liked it. I had to remind myself to breathe. I stepped away from the entrance, my head spinning. I stumbled down the hallway toward the bathrooms just to get some air, locked myself in a stall, and sat on the closed lid of the toilet trying not to throw up. My mind was racing. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe she was drunk. Maybe she lost a bet. Maybe, but no. No amount of mental gymnastics could justify what I saw. Eventually, I made it back out to the parking lot. I didn't confront her. I didn't make a scene. I didn't want to give her or that guy the satisfaction. I just watched from the shadows, leaning against my car, until I saw them walk out together, laughing, hand in hand like a couple on their anniversary. She didn't know I was there. I waited until they got into his car, a black BMW, and drove off. Then I got in my own and sat in the driver's seat with my head pressed against the steering wheel. Couldn't cry, couldn't scream. I just shut down. Completely. I didn't drive home right away. I ended up at some all-night diner off the highway. Ordered coffee. Didn't drink it. Just sat there for hours, playing the scene over and over again in my head like some twisted movie on loop. She had lied to me, looked me in the eye, kissed me goodbye, and told me to have fun, while she went off to celebrate her affair. And the worst part? I had seen the truth, and she still had no idea. The drive back from that diner felt longer than it should have. I don't even remember getting on the highway. I just remember blinking and suddenly being halfway home, the empty road stretching ahead like it was daring me to turn around. The city lights were a blur outside my window, and my thoughts were a tangle of anger, confusion, and something colder, something that felt like morning. Because the truth was, the second I saw Amber with that guy, laughing, wrapped around him like I'd never existed, something died inside me. But as much as it hurt, it didn't surprise me. Not really. Not when I started looking at everything that led to this point. That's when the memories started hitting me. Little ones I'd brushed off at the time, things that made my stomach tighten now that I saw them clearly. Started a few months back. Late nights at the office. I remember the first time she said she had to stay late for a client pitch. I even packed her a snack, left it on the counter with a note that said, "You got this." She didn't get home until nearly midnight. She said the meeting ran long. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But that became the new normal. Tuesday night meetings, Thursday happy hours, weekend strategy sessions that somehow didn't involve anyone else from her team. At least no one I ever met or heard about again. Then there was her phone. Amber used to leave it on the table, plugged in by the couch while we watched TV or cooked dinner. Now it was glued to her hand, always on silent, always face down. She started taking it into the bathroom with her, even when she showered. At first I teased her, "Afraid you'll miss an email from the soap company?" But she just smiled and said, "You know how fast things move at work." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe all of it. But now I saw it for what it was, hiding. And once I let myself admit that something was wrong, I started remembering more, like how she stopped initiating any affection. She used to be so touchy, always brushing her hand on my arm, leaning against me on the couch, kissing me on the cheek while passing by. But lately, she kept a physical distance like I was a coworker, not her husband. The few times I reached out to her in bed, she'd turn away or say she was tired. There were weeks we didn't even touch. I remember one morning. This must have been early spring. I leaned in to kiss her goodbye before work, and I caught this scent. It was light, floral, expensive. Not the perfume she usually wore. I asked about it and she laughed like I was being ridiculous. "Oh, it's probably from Michelle," she said. She hugged me in the break room and she always wears way too much perfume. At the time, I laughed with her. Michelle was always a character. But looking back now, I'm not so sure Michelle even exists. Another time, I woke up around 3 a.m. and reached out for her. The bed was cold, empty. I called out her name, but there was no answer. I found her in the kitchen, sitting in the dark with her phone in her lap. She claimed she couldn't sleep, didn't want to wake me. "Just needed some air," she said. "Didn't you hear me get up?" No, I didn't, but I heard the guilt in her voice, even then. And then there were the walks. Amber used to love walking together. Saturday mornings were our thing. Grab coffee, walk the trail near the river, talk about the week. But lately, she started taking walks alone. "I just need some time to myself," she'd say, "to clear my head." At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone needs personal space. But then I noticed she'd come back dressed a little too perfectly for a walk. Hair done, makeup flawless, like she was going somewhere, not just getting air. I told myself I was imagining things. That maybe I was the one pulling away. Maybe I was too wrapped up in work. I'd been dealing with some heavy deadlines, stress, and long hours myself. Maybe I hadn't been as present. So I made an effort, tried planning date nights again, leaving notes around the house like I used to, making dinner even when I was exhausted. She barely noticed. Or if she did, she didn't care. It's easy to miss red flags when you're trying to hold on to something. You convince yourself that love means patience, that rough patches are normal, that you just need to try harder. But love shouldn't feel like begging for scraps. And that's exactly what I was doing, fighting for something she had already walked away from. And now I couldn't unsee it. I got home late that night, pulled into the driveway and just sat there in the car for a while, staring at our porch light flickering over the flower bed she used to tend. It was overgrown now. Like everything else, untouched, neglected. Forgotten. I didn't go inside. Not right away. I opened my notes app and started typing. Writing down every memory, every inconsistency, every time my gut told me something and I didn't listen. I needed to see it all laid out in front of me. I needed proof, not for her, not to throw it in her face, but for myself. To remind myself I wasn't crazy. That my instincts were screaming for a reason. When I finally walked inside, she was asleep. Or pretending to be. Her phone was on the nightstand, face down as always. I watched her for a moment, her breathing steady, her face peaceful. For a split second, I envied her ability to sleep while I was unraveling. I climbed into bed, facing away from her. I didn't sleep much. In the morning, she acted like everything was normal. Made coffee, asked about my drive, even kissed me on the cheek. I nodded along, played the role I was expected to play, but something had shifted. I was no longer wondering if she was hiding something. Now I knew. And knowing changed everything. I didn't go to work the next morning. I called in, said I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't even a lie. My chest felt like it was being squeezed in a vice, my thoughts were racing, and I couldn't keep a steady hand long enough to pour a cup of coffee. But more than that, I knew I couldn't function until I got answers. Real ones. No more assumptions, no more second-guessing. I needed to know. Amber thought I was at the office. I made sure that, left the house early, dress shirt and slacks, briefcase in hand. I even kissed her on the cheek like everything was fine. But instead of heading to the freeway, I parked 3 blocks away from her office building. She worked in a high-rise downtown marketing firm. Glass front, sleek lobby, way too modern for its own good. I parked where I had a clear view of the front doors and just waited. The engine was off. The windows cracked. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel and I watched. For the first half hour, nothing happened. People went in, people came out. Business as usual. I started to feel ridiculous, like maybe I was spiraling too hard. Like I had stepped into the role of the paranoid husband who stakes out his own wife's office. And then I saw her. She came out of the front doors right around 9:45. Not alone. It was him. The man from the dinner. I recognized him immediately. Same build, same smug posture, same carefully put together look, like he walked out of a men's fashion ad. He wasn't just a random guy from that party, he was her person. The one she chose. Over me. They were walking close, arms not quite touching, but not with that detached distance you keep from a colleague. They stopped at the corner, waiting to cross the street, and that's when it happened. He reached for her hand. She didn't hesitate. Didn't even look around. Just took it. Intertwined her fingers with his like it was natural. Like it was normal. Then she leaned her head against his shoulder. I felt my jaw clench so tight it actually hurt. And right there, in the middle of the sidewalk, in broad daylight, he turned his head and kissed her. Not on the lips, on the temple. A soft, slow kiss. Like he wasn't rushing, like he didn't care who saw. Like they were a couple. She smiled. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just stared through the windshield, absorbing every second of it like a car crash I couldn't look away from. That was it. That was the moment. All the late nights, the weird excuses, the gaslighting, the cold bed, the secrecy, it all led to this. It wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't a mistake. It was a relationship. A second life she had built without me. And the way she acted, so comfortable, so open, it wasn't like she was sneaking around. It was like we didn't exist. Like our marriage, our home, our life was something she'd already erased. They walked a few more blocks together. I followed slowly from a distance. It was like watching strangers. She laughed at something he said, touched his arm while crossing the street, pointed to a bakery window like she wanted to go inside. He nodded and they went in together. I parked across the street, engine off, and stared at the glass front of the cafe. It was surreal watching her sit across from another man, sip a latte, and laugh like nothing she was doing required an ounce of shame. And maybe it didn't. Not to her. Maybe in her mind I was already out of the picture. Maybe she had convinced herself she was justified. That I'd failed her in some invisible way. That this was allowed. I stayed parked there for about 15 minutes. Just long enough to see them leave together, hands linked again, disappearing down the sidewalk and out of my view. Then I started the car and drove back home. Not in a rage. Not in a fog. Just numb. My brain was still functioning, going through the motions, stop at the red light, check the blind spot, don't miss the turn, but emotionally I was running on fumes. I pulled into the driveway, walked into the house, and everything hit me at once. Her shoes by the door. Her jacket on the hook. The scent of her shampoo lingering in the bathroom. All of it felt like a joke now. A stage set. A hollow set piece for a role she no longer cared to play. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. And the weirdest part? I didn't cry. Not yet. Because this wasn't the sad part. This was the moment the lie shattered. This was clarity. This was me crossing the invisible line between hoping I was wrong and knowing I wasn't. Later that day, I opened my laptop and started collecting things. Dates. Messages. Receipts. I made a list, every excuse she gave, every time something felt off. I wrote it all down, line by line. It felt mechanical, like assembling evidence for a trial I never wanted to attend. But I needed it. Not just for lawyers or future decisions. I needed to see it. To remind myself I wasn't crazy. That the truth had been in front of me the whole time. I texted my boss that I'd be out for the rest of the week. He didn't ask questions. At some point in the evening, Amber texted me. Hey babe, just wanted to check in. How's your day going? I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I considered typing out the truth. A screech asterisk T maybe. Or just one word, why? But I didn't respond. Not yet. Not until I was ready. Instead, I set the phone face down on the table. Just like she always did. The roles were shifting now. You know that feeling when you look back on something an entire chapter of your life and realize none of it was what you thought it was? Like watching a movie for the second time and finally catching all the signs you missed the first time through. That's what those next few days felt like. After seeing her with him, hand in hand, smiling like I didn't exist, I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to admit anything. I needed to see the truth for myself. I needed proof. Not for a courtroom. For my own sanity. That night, I opened up the folder I'd started digitally and in my head. Every weird excuse, every suspicious moment, every lie disguised as something innocent. I cross-checked them, started seeing patterns. And the more I looked, the more I realized she wasn't just cheating. She had been living another life entirely. It started with the work trips. Amber had been going on more of them in the last year than she had in the 5 years before that. Always different cities, always just a couple of days, but always just long enough for her to feel unreachable. I went back through her travel receipts. Thankfully, some of them had hit our joint account. That's when the first inconsistency jumped out. Last November, she told me she was going to Denver for a client meeting. She was supposed to stay at a Marriott downtown. But the transaction from that week? A boutique hotel, different name, different neighborhood, higher price tag. I Googled it. The place was known for romantic getaways and exclusive couples packages. She told me she was presenting to executives. She was getting room service and sleeping beside someone else. Another trip, this one to Chicago. Same story. She said her team had a conference, sent me a photo from the airport, even gave me the hotel name in advance. I called the hotel after the trip, told them I lost a receipt for reimbursement. They said no reservation under her name existed that week. Nothing. The pit in my stomach got deeper. And then there were the photos. Every time she came back from a work trip, she'd post a few pictures to social media, usually just hotel lobbies or airport selfies. Nothing with other people. No group *TS. No actual conference rooms or meetings. Just vague captions like, another day, another terminal, and the occasional picture of food she probably didn't eat. I started checking the metadata on some of those photos, timestamps, and geotags. Half of them didn't match the cities she said she was in. One said New Orleans when she claimed she'd been in Seattle. Another tagged a park in Charleston during a business dinner she swore took place in Atlanta. She wasn't just lying to me. She was building a cover story. An entire alternate reality. And I bought it. Every time. I remember a neighbor mentioned something once, back in the spring, said he thought he saw Amber downtown one night when she was supposed to be on a trip. I laughed it off. Said he probably saw someone else. Now I wonder how many other people knew and didn't say anything. And it wasn't just trips. I looked through her bank statements. She had opened a second credit card, one I didn't know about. I only found it because I saw a charge at a jewelry store and it triggered a fraud alert. I remember asking her about it when it popped up on her phone. Oh, she said, that's for a client gift. My company reimbursed me. She said it so fast, so smooth, that I didn't question it. But I checked that statement now. There were dozens of charges, restaurants we'd never been to, flower shops, hotel bars, even a spa in another city. All small, scattered, spaced out just enough that they didn't look suspicious on their own. But together, they painted a picture I didn't want to see. She wasn't just cheating in secret. She was investing in it, maintaining it, nurturing it, like it was something sacred to her. One afternoon, I found her old iPad tucked into the back of our media cabinet. She hadn't used it in a while. I powered it on and, to my surprise, her accounts were still logged in. Emails, calendar, cloud notes, nothing password protected. The first thing I noticed was that she had 2 calendars. One for work, one labeled personal. The personal calendar had entries that didn't match anything she ever told me: lunches at unfamiliar places, weekends blocked off with only initials, reminders like flight, B, 3 p.m., and D's birthday dinner. I didn't know who B or D was, but I knew it wasn't me. Then I checked her cloud notes. There were dozens. To-do lists, travel reminders, even a draft of a letter she never sent. What stopped me cold was one file titled simply, Things to Remember. I opened it. It was a checklist. Book hotel under fake name. Say conference ends at 6, actually ends at 4. Charge meals to personal card. Don't post too much. No selfies with me. Make sure to say I'm tired when I get back. I stared at it for what felt like an hour. She didn't just cheat. She planned it. She rehearsed it. She lived 2 lives. One with me and one she built in the cracks of the truth, just wide enough to disappear into, just narrow enough to keep me on the outside, confused and doubting myself. I went to our closet that night and looked at her clothes. I saw the new outfits I didn't remember her buying. Shoes she said were on sale, coats I'd never seen her wear around me. It was all starting to feel like a costume rack. Like she had her home self and her other self, and she switched between them depending on the audience. She came home late that night. Said she was stuck in traffic. Kissed me on the cheek and smiled like everything was fine. Asked what I wanted for dinner. I watched her from across the kitchen and felt like I was watching a stranger walk through my house. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because this wasn't just about catching her anymore. This was about understanding what I was dealing with. Who I was really married to. And how long I'd been living in someone else's story. I wish I could say that when I finally confronted Amber, it felt like some kind of dramatic payoff. You know, the moment where the lies crumble, the villain confesses, and everything becomes clear. But that's not what happened. The truth didn't come crashing down. It slipped out. Quietly. Hollow. Like it had already been drained of meaning before I even asked. It happened on a Tuesday night. One of those boring, gray days where nothing felt urgent, but everything felt heavy. She came home a little later than usual, said traffic was a mess again, something about an accident on the highway. I nodded, barely looking up from the table where I sat with a pen and paper, going over what I'd written the night before. She noticed the silence. She always did. You okay? She asked, dropping her bag on the kitchen chair and unzipping her boots. I think we should talk, I said, my voice flat. Her body stiffened just slightly, but she played it off with a tired smile. About what? I looked at her for a long moment. Not like a husband looks at his wife. More like someone examining a puzzle with the last piece missing and realizing it never fit in the first place. About us, I said. About the lies. That smile of hers, it didn't falter. It morphed. Softened into something sad. Something rehearsed. I figured this was coming, she said. There was no panic. No surprise. No denial. Just surrender. I leaned forward, placing the paper on the table between us. I want you to listen before you say anything. She nodded, her eyes dropping. I started reading. It wasn't long. Just bullet points. A timeline of every inconsistency, every contradiction, every date and time that didn't add up. The boutique hotel. The jewelry store. The Chicago trip. The cafe across town where I saw her with him. I didn't look at her while I read. I just spoke, slow and steady. Like it was a script. Like I couldn't risk letting emotion take over. When I finished, the room was dead silent. She sat down across from me, not crying, not angry. Just still. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she said finally. A cold laugh escaped before I could stop it. That's your opener? She winced but didn't back down. I'm not making excuses. But I need you to understand. I didn't plan for it to happen. Really? I said, my voice sharp now. Because I read your checklist, Amber. The one on your iPad. The one with reminders not to post too much or take selfies with him. That doesn't sound accidental. She flinched but didn't deny it. It started with loneliness, she said, folding her hands like she was in a therapy session. You were always working. You'd come home late, distracted, tired. We stopped talking. I felt like I was invisible. So you made yourself visible to someone else. I didn't go looking for it. It happened. He was kind to me. He listened. And then what? You just fell into his bed by accident. Her eyes narrowed. You think this was easy for me? You want my sympathy now? I snapped. You've been lying to me for over a year. Living a double life. You made me question my own sanity. And now you want to cry about how hard it was for you. She leaned back, exhaling slowly, as if she'd practiced this moment. I didn't come in here to scream at you, I said, forcing my voice to steady. I came in here to hear the truth. The real one. Not the version you think makes you look less guilty. She stared at me for a long time, and then finally she gave me the only honest thing I think she'd said in months. I was waiting for you to figure it out, she said. So I wouldn't have to tell you. Those words hit me harder than any affair ever could. You were waiting? I repeated. She nodded slowly. I knew it was only a matter of time. You're not stupid. You were just still trying. And I wasn't. I wasn't trying anymore. I didn't know how to leave, so I stayed. And lied. There it was. The core of it. Not a moment of weakness. Not a mistake. Not even guilt, really. Just apathy. Cold, clinical apathy. I thought maybe if you confronted me, you'd be the one to walk away, she added, almost like a confession. That way I wouldn't have to feel like the bad guy. You were the bad guy, I said. She didn't argue. She just sat there, hands clasped, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Not broken. Just tired. Like she'd been carrying the lie so long it had started to crush her too. I don't hate you, I said after a long pause. But I don't love you anymore either. She looked down, a flicker of something, maybe regret, crossing her face. I think I stopped a long time ago, I added, quieter now. But I didn't want to admit it. I kept thinking we could fix it if I just tried harder. But you were already gone. I'm sorry, she whispered. But it was too late for that. I didn't even feel angry anymore. The fire had burned out and all that remained was the ash. You don't need to be sorry, I said, standing. You need to be gone. Her eyes met mine, red but dry. So that's it? That's it. She didn't protest. Didn't ask me to stay. She just nodded once, like she had expected this from the beginning. Maybe she had. I walked out of the room, left her sitting there alone at the table where we used to eat dinner and plan vacations. The same table where she sat every weeknight while texting another man under the guise of work stress. I didn't pack a bag that night. I didn't call anyone. I just stood in the hallway staring at the photos on the wall, wedding, anniversary, trips we took, memories that now felt more like set pieces in a play than real moments. And the thing that haunted me most? She was willing to throw it all away for someone I hadn't even heard of before last week. Some faceless name she never brought up. That's how replaceable I'd become in my own marriage. No fight. No resistance. Just quiet acceptance. And somehow that hurt more than the betrayal itself. I didn't shout. I didn't throw things. I didn't demand explanations or scream about how she ruined everything. I just looked at her and said the words that had been sitting on my chest for too long. I'm leaving. Amber didn't say much. No desperate pleas. No dramatic apology. She just nodded like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. Maybe she thought she'd feel relief when I finally said it. Maybe I did too. But all I felt was empty. I packed that night, grabbing only what I needed, essentials, clothes, a few personal things. I left the rest, left the keys on the counter, left the house that we'd filled with memories, routines, inside jokes that didn't mean anything anymore. I didn't look back. She sat on the couch the whole time, staring at the floor. No tears, no anger, just silence. Maybe she thought I'd change my mind, but there was nothing left to fight for. As I closed the door behind me, the quiet hit harder than expected. I wasn't just leaving her. I was walking away from a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. The one who ignored red flags, made excuses, held on too long. I got in the car and drove. And for the first time in months, the road ahead felt honest. I stayed with my brother in another city for a while. Turned off my phone. Deleted social media. I needed to disappear from everything, even myself. The first few days were the hardest. I'd wake up expecting to hear her in the kitchen. I'd instinctively check my phone, half expecting a message from her. But there was nothing. Then something strange started happening. I began to breathe easier. There were no more lies to untangle. No more pretending things were fine. Just silence. And in that silence, clarity. I started walking more, eating better. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. Each day I felt like I was shedding something. Anger, shame, guilt. I stopped blaming myself for her betrayal. The truth hurt, yes, but it also set me free. I don't know what the future holds. But I do know this. I will never again let someone make me feel invisible in my own life. And I will never ignore my gut again. I survived. And that's more than enough for now.